Hello, everyone, and welcome to Security Learning Bites. Today is episode 1, where we're going to cover Enable MFA. I'm Marie Schmidt. I'm a partner technology strategist here at Microsoft. And in today's episode, I'll be joined by Zachary Ripple, partner solution architect for security at Microsoft. Let's first go over how to enable MFA. There's 3 main ways to enable that with Microsoft Entra. First, we have conditional access policies, and that's the recommended approach in enabling MFA in Microsoft Entra. Those conditional access policies, they allow you to define policies that dynamically respond to sign-in events. For example, they can be based on things like user, device, location, risk signal, and you can require MFA before granting access to very specific applications or services as well. So that granularity ensures a really tailored, scalable, and secure experience for all your users. The second way that you can enable MFA is with tenant secure defaults. And if you're using Microsoft Entra ID free without the conditional access feature, the tenant secure defaults is your next best option. That feature enforces basic security measures such as requiring MFA for all users. And it doesn't allow for custom policies, but it does provide a foundational level of protection for smaller or maybe less complex environments. And then finally, we have the individual user or group-based MFA. That approach enables MFA for specific users or groups on a per account basis. And so this is definitely not the most scalable method, but it's useful for small organizations or very specific edge cases where conditional access isn't available. Let's dive a little bit deeper into how conditional access policies actually work. So they ensure that the right people have access to the right resources under the right conditions. And it all starts with signals. Conditional access evaluates key factors such as the user's identity, the location, the device that they're using, the application that they want to access, and then also real-time risk signals that get picked up. These signals are collected and analyzed as it happens. Based on those different signals, we have policies that then determine the appropriate response for each access attempt. There's 3 possible outcomes. Either access is allowed and you can seamlessly access whatever application you want to access if the signals are low risk and compliant. You can also require multi-factor authentication if that is outside of the current trust boundary for an added layer of security. And finally, if the risk is too high, you can completely block the access to safeguard your organization. This is an approach that's very dynamic and that helps to protect your apps and data by responding to risk and enforcing security without compromising productivity. I will now hand it over to Zachary.
Let's start the demo. So as an analyst, I start my day within the Azure portal, and I'll navigate to Microsoft Defender for Cloud. I have it saved here under my recent services. However, you can also navigate to it by doing a quick keyword search here. So let's open up the Microsoft Defender for Cloud portal. Immediately, we'll see that there's just a lot of information to sift through. We see we have 5 Azure subscriptions connected, as well as 1 AWS account, 3 GCP projects. And we also see that there are over 6,000 assessed resources, 690 different identified ways an attacker can attack those resources. And most importantly, on the right, 335 security alerts associated with those attack paths and resources. I want to make an important distinction that Microsoft Defender for Cloud is for protection of your multi-cloud resources, for example, your VMs, whereas Sentinel and Microsoft Defender XDR are for incident response all up. So let's navigate to the security alerts dashboard. The easiest way to filter for an MFA alert is by simply typing MFA here in the search bar, and the alert should pop up. Another way to find these alerts is by going to the recommendations dashboard. If we go back to Microsoft Defender for Cloud homepage and down to recommendations, you will also see that recommendation appear here. However, you can also look up MFA here in the search bar. And there we see, ensure MFA is enabled on S3 buckets. That is for a different subscription. If you're familiar with the recommendations dashboard, this might look a bit more familiar to you. This is the original dashboard. Here you see your secure score, as well as the different secure score recommendations. And they're organized by your potential score increase per remediation or recommendation. As you see, Enable MFA is the largest single remediation you can take to increase your secure score. It increases it by 10 points, which is why we're focusing on it in this first learning bite. The easiest way to enable MFA is by navigating to the Entra Admin Center and down to Users and All Users. Here you'll see all of the users in your environment, and you can easily click on multiple users such as Adele, Angel, and Bagul, and navigate to per user MFA. You'll have to select their names again once you open up this portal: Adele, Angel, and Bagul. In here, you can enable MFA or disable MFA or enforce MFA and make them re-authenticate with one click. Or there are additional actions here on the right, such as requiring selected users to provide contact methods, delete all their existing app passwords, or restore MFA on their remembered devices. And you can do one or all, as many as you would like, and it's as easy again as one click and then selecting save here at the bottom. And that is how to enable MFA within Entra.
Let's now have a look at how to enable Entra ID security defaults. As a reminder, security defaults are there to make it easier to help protect your organization from identity-related attacks like password spray, replay, and phishing, which are very common in today's environment. So Microsoft is making those pre-configured settings available to everyone because we know that managing security can be difficult, and based on our learnings, more than 99.9% of those common identity-related attacks are stopped by implementing basic security hygiene. Some of those basic controls include elements such as requiring users to do multi-factor authentication when necessary, blocking legacy authentication protocols, but also protecting privileged activities like access to the Azure portal. These should have gotten auto-enabled if you didn't have per user MFA or conditional access enabled by June 27th of last year, so 2024. But let's quickly run through how to enable those. Here you can see that I'm logged into the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to browse over to the Identity tab here, and then I'm going to click on Overview. And then here I'm going to go over to the third tab, which is the Properties tab. Here I have the Security Defaults option. And if I would want to go ahead and enable those, I would have a button here. In this case, it's not the case because I'm currently using conditional access policies, and those actually prevent me from enabling security defaults. So it's really an either or situation. And if you want to go ahead and enable conditional access policies, you would actually need to go ahead and disable those security defaults. But they are a great baseline to get started on your security posture. The thing with security defaults is that they don't allow for the customization that many organizations require. And so that's where we have conditional access policies that provide a full range of customization that more complex organizations very often require. So let's have a look at those in action. I'm going to go back to the home screen. And this time I'm going to navigate to the Protection tab. Note that I will at least need the conditional access administrator role to be able to perform this action. I'm going to move over to the conditional access, and then I will click on policies. In this example, we're going to set up a policy that will require a specific multi-factor authentication strength for all users. I'm going to go ahead and click New Policy. And then in terms of the name, we recommend that you follow standardized and structured naming conventions. But in this example, I'm just going to call it Require MFA Strength for all users. Once I go down here, I can see for assignments, I'm going to select my users. Ultimately, I will want it to apply to all users. But as you can see here, we recommend that you apply the policy to a small set of users first to verify how it behaves. And so that's what we're going to do in this demo. We're going to go ahead and select a group, specifically my sysadmins. Once that is done, I'm going to move down to the access controls, and I'm going to select Grant. Here you can see that I can grant access and I can require a specific authentication strength as I do so. And here I'm going to select phishing resistant MFA. There's a lot of other options that you can choose from to fit your business needs. At the bottom, before completing, you can see that if I have multiple controls, I can require all of the selected controls to be valid to grant access, or only one of the selected controls for further granularity to meet your needs. Before going ahead and enabling the policy, you can see at the bottom that I'm currently in report only mode. That mode is suggested to evaluate the policy and see how it behaves. And then once I'm satisfied with that, I can go ahead and change it to on later on. This concludes our demo.
For implementing conditional access, it's crucial to also understand what features are available in each Entra ID tier or license. So Entra does offer a free tier with user and group management features, or otherwise known as role-based access controls, or RBAC, SSO, or single sign-on, self-service password reset, or SSPR, and then, of course, our beloved MFA, or multi-factor authentication. Entra ID P1, or formerly Azure Active Directory, or AAD P1, is available as a standalone license, but it's also included with E3 for enterprise customers, as well as business premium for small to medium businesses. It adds all MFA features in dynamic groups, as you can see there on the bottom. And it's important to note that Entra ID P1 is $6 per user per month. Entra ID P2, or formerly Azure Active Directory P2, is also available as a standalone license. However, it is included with E5 for enterprise customers. It's worth noting that it adds PIM, or Privileged Identity Management, as well as identity protection. And P2 is $9 per user per month. Finally, the Entra Suite, which is only available as a standalone license or tier, spans just about everything under the sun for identity and access management, including network access, identity protection, governance, and more. And Entra ID P1 is a prerequisite that is important to know for the Entra Suite. However, there are discounts available, and I'll talk more about that on the next slide, if you already have P2 or E5. The Entra Suite, as you see there on the bottom, adds identity governance, Entra Verified ID in the recently very popular private access and internet access. And it is $12 per user per month. So I've been asked before by some of our partners, but what if I purchase the Entra Suite, which is $12 per user per month, but I already have P1 or P2? Well, I want to address this question and others like it for absolute clarity. There is no additional cost below $12 per user per month unless you already have Entra ID P2. As a reminder, Entra ID P1 is the prerequisite, and if you already have P2, you won't be charged twice for overlapping features, such as Entra ID protection. Another question I'm commonly asked is, this is great information, but where do I start on my security journey if I'm a small, medium, or maybe even an enterprise business that's building out, let's say, a SOC, or Security Operations Center? Well, we recommend starting with basic security hygiene to better protect not only yourself, but also your customers. And that first point is enabling MFA. And I cropped and pasted in here a tweet from last month. And it says, I was talking to a CISO the other day, and he mentioned that when his org implemented MFA with our Authenticator app, it reduced the aggregate number of security incidents by 25%. And then the rollout of YubiKeys for all employees reduced it another 25%. Next, we recommend applying zero trust principles. And I couldn't recommend enough exploring our zero trust deployment essentials blog and playbook to learn how to do so. Use an XDR, that's extended detection and response platform, like Microsoft Defender XDR. Ensure everything is up to date, especially your firmware, and implement the right protections for your data, which is particularly critical for Copilot adoption. And keep in mind, you may need to work with your partner center admin to set up some of these practices. And that's all we had for this first Learning Bite today. I'm going to hand it back over to Marie.
Thank you so much for those insights, Zachary. This concludes our first episode of the Security Learning Bites, Enable MFA. We will see you in the next one. Take care.